Hey man, there's a truth most men never realize until much later in life. A woman may walk away from you. She may act cold. She may pretend she's unaffected. She may even convince herself that she's healed. But deep down, she carries the weight of losing a man who genuinely cared for her in ways she never understood at the time. Women don't process loss the same way men do. When a relationship ends, the man feels the pain immediately. It hits him like a wall. But for her, the impact is delayed. She lives in emotional denial at first, numbing herself with distractions, attention, validation, and temporary connections. She doesn't feel the absence right away because the world gives her endless ways to avoid introspection. But when the noise fades, when her options dry up, when reality settles in, that's when the truth begins to sting. And no matter what she says publicly, privately, she feels the shadow of what she lost. What she doesn't tell you, what she doesn't even admit to herself, is that the man who truly cared for her becomes a reference point she measures every future man against, not consciously, but emotionally. She doesn't compare faces, she compares energy. She doesn't compare achievements, she compares how safe she felt around you. She doesn't compare conversations, she compares how deeply you understood her without needing explanations. You became a template of emotional depth she didn't appreciate when she had it. And now, even if she's moved on, even if she claims she's healed, even if she's posting happy pictures online, there are quiet moments where she realizes the connection she walked away from isn't something she can recreate. Not with effort, not with time, not with someone new. Women are emotionally intelligent, but that intelligence becomes a double-edged sword. When she loses a good man, she tries to rewrite the story in her mind so she doesn't feel the blame. She tells herself, "You were too much, too emotional, too distant, too unavailable, too demanding, too inconsistent." Whatever narrative helps her avoid confronting her own mistakes. She convinces herself she made the right decision because admitting the opposite means acknowledging she ruined something meaningful, so she builds walls of justification around her actions. She seeks advice from friends who reinforce her version of events. She follows influencers who validate emotional impulsiveness. She tries to drown out the guilt with noise because silence terrifies her. Silence forces her to face the reality she ran away from, but eventually, life forces her into that silence. Maybe her new relationship lacks depth. Maybe the man she chose isn't as emotionally present as you were. Maybe she realizes attention isn't the same as affection. Maybe she discovers desire isn't the same as commitment. Women often trade emotional depth for short-term excitement, only to realize later that excitement doesn't provide safety, stability, or peace. When she finally understands that what she lost wasn't just a man, but a version of herself she could only access around you, the regret hits her differently. Not dramatic regret, not loud regret, quiet regret, the kind that lingers, the kind that follows her into her future relationships, reminding her of the connection she abandoned. She may pretend that losing you didn't affect her. She may appear strong, independent, and emotionally unbothered. She might even take pride in how quickly she moved on. But there's a difference between moving on and moving forward. Moving on is simply doing something else. Moving forward requires emotional resolution, and that's where she struggles, because you weren't just another man to her. You represented a level of emotional grounding she didn't know how to appreciate at the time. While she's out chasing the next high, the truth sits quietly in the background. Losing a man who actually cared is never something a woman fully bounces back from. What hits her hardest is not your absence, it's the version of herself she lost when she lost you. Around you, she was softer, calmer, more open, more feminine, more grounded. You brought out a side of her that she doesn't find with every man. When she moves on, she may find attention, but she doesn't find emotional safety. She may find affirmation, but she doesn't find understanding. She may find interest, but she doesn't find reciprocity. She may find attraction, but she doesn't find devotion. And somewhere deep within her, she realizes that the version of herself she became around you is something she misses more than the relationship itself. Even when she claims she's healed, there are moments where something small triggers the memory of you, a song, a scent, a place, a phrase someone else uses, the way another man smiles, the silence she sits in when she's thinking. These reminders don't cause emotional collapse, they cause emotional reflection, and reflection is where the truth lives. She starts piecing together things she never noticed before, appreciating little moments she took for granted, recognizing your efforts she dismissed, realizing your consistency wasn't common. That's when the emotional regret starts becoming real. Because the farther she goes into new connections, the more she sees how rare the old one actually was. Women often claim they heal quickly after a relationship, but what they don't admit is that their healing depends entirely on whether they find a deeper connection. If she doesn't, and most don't, the loss of you becomes a permanent reference point in her mind, not in a dramatic way, not in a nostalgic way, but in a subtle way that affects her choices without her realizing it. She becomes more guarded, more cautious, more skeptical. She tests men faster, she trusts slower. She opens up with hesitation because she knows deep down she had something real once and she didn't know how to protect it. That realization doesn't break her, but it shapes her. And here's what most men never understand. Women don't feel the full weight of losing a good man until life humbles them. Maybe the man she chose breaks her trust. Maybe the exciting fling turns into emotional emptiness. Maybe she realizes that attention is easy to get, but emotional intimacy is rare. Maybe she watches you transform into a stronger, happier, more fulfilled version of yourself without her. Women are emotional creatures. They feel deeply, but they also process slowly. And when the day arrives where she finally understands what she walked away from, the regret she feels is different from the pain you felt. Your pain was immediate. Hers is long-term. Yours burned and faded. Hers whispers and lingers. Even if she tells her friends she's healed, even if she tells herself she's fine, even if she tries to prove she has moved on, she's not unaffected. She carries the imprint of what you were to her, not because you were perfect, not because you never made mistakes, but because you were real. In a world where superficial connections are everywhere, men like you are rare. She knows that now, even if she'll never admit it, even if she buries it deep, even if her pride won't allow her to say it. Women don't heal from losing a good man. They adapt, they distract, they move forward, but they never fully forget, because the kind of presence you brought into her life doesn't disappear. It becomes a reminder of what she may never find again. Over time, something subtle starts happening inside her, something she doesn't talk about, and something she doesn't even understand until it's already too late. She begins to notice the difference between the man she thought she wanted and the man she actually needed. The man she chased for excitement doesn't bring her peace. The man who gave her attention doesn't give her understanding. The man who flirted with her everywhere doesn't show emotional responsibility. The men she meets after you may be charming, exciting, unpredictable, or adventurous, but none of them offer the emotional stability she once felt in your presence. And when she starts comparing the way those men make her feel to the way you made her feel, she experiences a quiet kind of pain, not heartbreak, but recognition that she misjudged what mattered. She may go on dates, she may get compliments, she may get attention, she may even get into a new relationship, but something inside her always feels slightly disconnected, not because she's heartbroken, but because she knows something deeper. She didn't replace you, she replaced the role you had in her life, but not your impact. People can fill roles easily, boyfriend, partner, companion, but impact is personal, impact is rare, impact is emotional. The way you listened, the depth you brought, the certainty you carried, the emotional balance she felt around you, those things don't go away when the relationship ends. They stay with her as a memory, a comparison, a reminder of what she once had but didn't understand. What she doesn't tell anyone is that she wonders if you ever cared as deeply as she now remembers. She thinks about whether you ever think of her. She questions whether letting go of you was maturity or mistake. She plays conversations in her mind, trying to piece together where things really went wrong. She reinterprets moments she once dismissed. She regrets reactions she thought were justified. She examines your silence and wonders why it doesn't break you the way she expected. Women feel regret differently. It's not loud or chaotic. It's introspective. It creeps in during the quiet moments. It comes when she's alone at night scrolling through her phone. It hits her when she sees a couple sharing the kind of closeness she never fully appreciated with you. It whispers, "You had this once and you let it go." Many men don't realize that a woman's regret grows strongest when she sees you rebuilding your life without her, when she sees you leveling up, not collapsing, when she sees you glowing differently, laughing differently, carrying yourself differently. A woman expects a man to fall apart after she leaves, not because she wants him to suffer, but because she wants to believe she mattered that much. When you remain calm, centered, and focused, it shakes her perception. Not hearing from you forces her to confront something she never considered. Maybe she wasn't as irreplaceable as she believed. And when she witnesses your silence, your growth, your strength, she begins to feel the weight of her decision more intensely than she ever anticipated. Her healing also becomes complicated because she starts encountering the consequences of her impulsive choices. Maybe she walked away because she wanted excitement. Maybe she wanted attention from others. Maybe she thought there were better options out there. But once she realizes those options are not what she imagined, she starts missing the stability she once had. The world outside the relationship is not gentle, it's filled with superficiality, uncertainty, confusion, and emotional inconsistency. And when she finally gets tired of that cycle, her mind drifts back to the time when she didn't have to question your intentions or guess your motives. That comparison becomes a quiet source of emotional discomfort she can't escape. She may act like she's moved on, but memories don't leave the feminine mind as quickly as people think. Women store emotional memories in layers. They suppress them in the beginning, but those memories resurface at unexpected moments. A message you once sent her, a song that meant something to both of you, a moment where she felt safe in your arms, a time when you stood by her when she was falling apart. These memories don't fade. They become the emotional bookmarks she revisits unconsciously. And when she realizes how differently she felt with you compared to the uncertainty she feels now, her healing becomes a cycle, not a progression. Another reason she never fully heals is because she never truly replaces your presence. She may find someone new who fills certain gaps, someone who is funnier, more talkative, more outgoing, more ambitious, but no man replicates the exact emotional connection you shared. Some people come into your life and change you. You were that person for her. You shaped her. You taught her. You supported her in ways she didn't appreciate at the time. And once someone has experienced depth, shallow connections feel empty. Once she has experienced loyalty, unpredictability feels unsafe. Once she has experienced emotional honesty, mind games feel exhausting. She tries to adapt, but adaptation isn't healing. Women often pretend they're healed because they don't want to appear vulnerable. They play strong, confident, unbothered. They post pictures with big smiles. They talk about being happier now. They create a narrative that keeps them from facing the discomfort of regret. But deep down, she knows that losing a man who genuinely cared was a turning point in her life. She may not admit it to family, friends, or even herself, but she feels it. She feels it when she tries to connect with someone new, and the emotional depth isn't there. She feels it when she tries to recreate intimacy, and it feels forced. She feels it when she realizes that what she once walked away from was something most women spend years searching for. The more time passes, the more she understands that healing doesn't erase you, it just teaches her how to live with the memory. She doesn't forget the emotional safety you offered. She doesn't forget how you made her feel seen. She doesn't forget the way you showed up for her consistently. She doesn't forget the way you handled her emotions better than she handled them herself. These things don't disappear with time, they echo. And as she grows older, as she matures, as she becomes more aware of what real connection looks like, she realizes that the version of love you offered doesn't come around often. That realization is one of the hardest truths she'll ever face. And here's the deepest truth of all. She never fully heals from losing you because she loses a part of her identity that only existed in the relationship with you. You brought out a softer version of her, a more vulnerable version, a more trusting version. That version doesn't just disappear, it goes dormant. She tries to protect herself by never letting anyone in that deeply again. The result? She becomes more closed, more guarded, more hardened. But that's not healing, that's self-protection. And she knows, deep within her emotional core, that the reason she has to protect herself now is because she walked away from someone who would have protected her instead. As more time passes, she starts realizing that the world she expected to find outside the relationship is not the world she actually walked into. She thought things would feel freeing, exciting, refreshing, but instead she encounters the coldness of modern dating, the inconsistency of men who don't commit, and the emotional distance of men who never truly invest. She thought leaving you would open doors to something better, but all she finds are half-hearted conversations, surface-level connections, and people who are more interested in temporary pleasure than long-term meaning. And it's in these experiences that her regret quietly transforms. It stops being about missing you and becomes about realizing she misunderstood her own emotional needs. She thought she needed excitement. What she really needed was stability. She thought she needed attention. What she really needed was emotional safety. You represented that, and she didn't know it until she lost it. Eventually, she begins replaying the relationship differently in her mind. Not the conflict, not the arguments, not the emotional misunderstandings. Those fade with time. What remains are the moments where she felt seen without explaining, understood without words, valued without performance. She remembers how you responded when she was emotional. She remembers how you stayed calm when she was overwhelmed. She remembers how you listened when she felt unheard by everyone else. These memories return not because she's still in love, but because emotional imprints remain long after attraction fades. She tries to brush these thoughts away, but the mind remembers what the heart failed to appreciate, and in those reflections, she understands your value more clearly than she ever did when you were present. Her regret deepens when she notices changes in herself, changes she didn't expect. She becomes less open, less trusting, more cautious with her emotions. She becomes quicker to assume the worst, slower to reveal her true feelings, more defensive when she starts caring. Losing you didn't turn her cold. Losing you made her realize how vulnerable she once allowed herself to be. And now, she doesn't want to risk experiencing that depth again with someone who might not handle her emotions the way you did. This isn't healing, it's self-protection masking as strength. She may appear tougher now, but that toughness came at the cost of emotional softness she only ever expressed with you. When she sees you evolving, leveling up, improving your life, and becoming a stronger man, something inside her tightens, not jealousy, something deeper. She realizes that the man she didn't choose is becoming the exact version she hoped her next partner would be. Women experience regret through comparison. They compare the man you're becoming to the man they replaced you with, and the difference haunts them quietly. She sees that you're calmer, more confident, more disciplined, more grounded, and she can't help but imagine how things would be if she had stayed long enough to grow with you instead of leaving. She never admits this aloud, but she feels it every time she sees your life moving forward, while hers feels stagnant emotionally. Her healing becomes even more complicated when she realizes she can't return to the connection the way it once was. She knows she hurt you, she knows she lost your trust, she knows your silence isn't anger, it's acceptance, and acceptance from a man hurts more than any confrontation ever could. She begins to understand that your absence is not a punishment, it's a boundary she created through her actions. Women struggle with the idea that a man who loved deeply can walk away with calmness. It challenges her belief that she held emotional power over you. It forces her to confront the reality that you were never attached in the way she assumed. You were committed, but not dependent. And that difference shakes her self-perception. She never tells anyone about the moments where she scrolls through old photos, reads old messages, or remembers the way things once felt. Not because she wants you back, but because she wants to reconnect with the version of herself she was when she was with you. She was softer, more patient, more optimistic, more emotionally open. Losing you forced her into a level of maturity she wasn't prepared for. She learned the difference between temporary admiration and long-term loyalty. She learned the difference between attention and effort. She learned the difference between desire and devotion. And those lessons didn't come from her new experiences. They came from comparing everything else to you. A woman never fully heals from losing a man she once felt safe with, because that kind of emotional safety becomes the standard by which she unconsciously evaluates every future relationship. Even if she meets someone who checks more boxes, looks better on paper, or fits her long-term goals, she still remembers how she felt with you. She remembers the peace. She remembers the emotional consistency. She remembers the trust. And when she realizes those qualities aren't easily found, she begins to understand how rare the connection was. Healing doesn't erase this understanding, it amplifies it. It shows her what she didn't appreciate, and that's a truth she carries quietly throughout her life. Another reason she never fully heals is because she eventually realizes you weren't trying to control her, you were trying to love her, and she wasn't ready to receive it. At the time, she interpreted your efforts as pressure, your consistency as routine, your boundaries as criticism, your loyalty as predictability. But with time and emotional maturity, she sees those things for what they truly were, signs of a man who is ready for a deeper connection than she was prepared to offer. This recognition doesn't break her, but it changes her. It makes her more aware of the emotional immaturity she brought into the relationship, and she carries that awareness into every future connection, often with a quiet sense of guilt she can never fully articulate. The truth is, she doesn't heal from losing you, because part of her healing requires accepting responsibility, and that's the hardest part. It's easier to move on when she can blame the man. It's easier to heal when she can convince herself it wasn't her fault. But when she processes the truth, that she pushed away the very stability she secretly craved, her healing becomes intertwined with regret. She recognizes that she didn't just lose someone who cared about her. She lost someone she could have built a meaningful future with. And that understanding doesn't disappear, even when the relationship is long over. And finally, she never fully heals, because you were a chapter in her life that shaped her emotionally. You didn't just occupy time, you impacted her trajectory. You changed what she expects, what she values, what she fears, what she looks for, and what she avoids. Every man who enters her life after you is judged subconsciously against the emotional depth she once felt. Healing may help her move forward, but it doesn't erase the mark you left. She may grow, she may evolve, she may love again, but a part of her will always remember that she once had something real, and she didn't know how to keep it. As time keeps moving, she begins to understand that what she lost wasn't just a relationship, it was an anchor. You offered her emotional grounding. She didn't value when she had it. She misinterpreted your steadiness as boredom, your predictability as lack of excitement, your loyalty as standard, and your calmness as lack of passion. But as she meets more people, as she experiences more relationships, she slowly realizes how rare that grounding actually is. Most men she encounters are inconsistent, distracted, or emotionally unavailable. Many are more focused on validation than connection, more interested in pleasure than partnership, more invested in attention than loyalty. The emotional instability she once romanticized now exhausts her, and in that exhaustion, the memory of your steadiness hits her with a heaviness she can't escape. She also begins to notice the emotional patterns she developed after losing you. She becomes more defensive. She guards her heart more fiercely. She questions men's intentions. She analyzes every word, every gesture, every shift in tone. This skepticism wasn't there when she was with you. Back then, she trusted easily because your energy made her feel safe enough to open up without fear. Now, she doesn't trust that easily. She keeps walls around her emotions. Not because she wants to, but because she knows what it feels like to lose something real, and she doesn't want to experience that kind of vulnerability again. Losing you didn't destroy her, but it changed how she shows up in relationships. That shift isn't healing, it's emotional armor. She'll never admit it, but she compares every man's emotional capacity to yours. When someone new listens to her, she notices the difference. When someone new gives her attention, she feels the lack of depth. When someone tries to comfort her, she feels the absence of your patience. When someone tries to understand her, she feels the superficiality of their efforts. She pretends not to notice. She convinces herself she's healed. She tells herself she's moved on. But comparison is involuntary. It's instinctive. It's emotional memory. And every comparison reminds her of the connection she once took lightly. She doesn't talk about it because acknowledging it means accepting the truth she's been avoiding, that you are different. Her regret intensifies when she sees you begin to form a new life, not just improving yourself, but emotionally evolving. Your silence speaks louder than any words you could have said. The fact that you didn't chase her, didn't beg, didn't try to convince her, didn't attempt to force reconciliation, that alone affects her more than anything else. It tells her you had strength she didn't recognize. It tells her you had self-respect she underestimated. It tells her you loved her deeply, but you loved yourself enough not to break in front of her. A woman never forgets a man who handled heartbreak with dignity. Your silence becomes the mirror she never wanted to look into. There are moments where she questions whether she misread the entire relationship. She wonders if you cared more deeply than she ever understood. She wonders if your love was real in ways she was too emotionally immature to appreciate. She wonders whether her choices were influenced by impulsiveness rather than clarity. These thoughts don't leave her, they follow her. Not constantly, but consistently enough to shape her future choices. She becomes more cautious in relationships, not because she's healed, but because she's afraid of repeating the same mistake, pushing away a man who genuinely cared. This fear becomes part of her emotional identity, something she carries long after you've moved on. Another reason she never fully heals is the realization that you were the last man who truly saw her without judgment. You saw her flaws and stayed. You saw her emotional storms and held your ground. You saw her insecurities and didn't use them against her. You saw her imperfections and didn't run. Most men don't offer this depth of understanding, either because they're incapable of it or because they don't care enough to try. When she experiences relationships where she is misunderstood more than understood, avoided more than embraced, judged more than accepted, she remembers your patience, she remembers your compassion, and she feels the absence of the emotional acceptance she once took for granted. Her healing becomes even more tangled when she realizes that the man she left is becoming the man she now wishes she had. This realization hits hardest when she sees you succeed in ways she doubted you could, emotionally, mentally, socially, financially. She sees the improvement in your confidence, the discipline in your lifestyle, the calmness in your presence. She realizes the man she left behind was only the beginning, and the man you've become now is someone she would have been proud to stand beside. That contrast doesn't just surprise her, it haunts her. Because regret is not about losing someone as they were, it's about losing someone they were destined to become. She also struggles with the fact that you no longer see her the way you once did. Women feel this deeply. She knows your love was genuine, consistent, and intense. And now that she no longer has access to it, she feels the emotional vacuum more than you'd ever think. Even if she doesn't want the relationship back, she misses the version of herself she was when someone loved her without conditions. She misses the emotional safety she felt in your presence. She misses the comfort of knowing someone cared, even when she made mistakes. That feeling doesn't just vanish, it lingers as a quiet ache she carries into her future relationships. Another painful truth emerges as she grows older. She begins to understand that loyalty, emotional stability, and genuine affection are not standard traits in men. They are rare. She realizes that many men offer attention but not care, desire but not devotion, presence but not consistency. In the beginning, she thought losing you was something she could bounce back from quickly. But as she gains more life experience, she sees how costly losing a good man truly is. She learns that men who can offer emotional consistency and depth are far fewer than she believed. And when she fully understands that rarity, the regret transforms into something permanent. By the time she finally acknowledges the truth, that losing you was one of the major emotional turning points of her life, you've usually moved so far ahead that she can't reach you anymore. Not because you're punishing her, not because you're bitter, not because you're avoiding her, but because you've evolved past the version of yourself who needed her love. Your life has expanded, your self-worth has solidified, your emotional world is no longer tied to her presence or absence, and that realization is what she struggles with the most. Because once a woman recognizes that the man she lost became stronger without her, that's when she understands she will never truly heal from the loss, only learn how to live with it. As more time passes, the truth settles into her in a way she can't escape. She didn't just lose a relationship, she lost access to the only version of love that ever made her feel emotionally safe. She can date other men, she can find someone better on paper, she can surround herself with attention, but she can't recreate the emotional container you once held for her, and she hates that truth. Not because she wants you back, but because it forces her to confront the reality that she didn't know how to value something real until it was gone. This realization becomes a quiet ache that follows her into the future, a reminder of who she was when she had someone who truly cared, and who she became after she let him go. She also begins to understand how deeply you loved her, only when she experiences men who don't listen, men who don't show up consistently, men who don't protect her emotions, men who don't invest effort beyond the surface, men who see her as temporary, men who want her body but not her soul. Each of these experiences becomes another layer of regret because it highlights what she lost. She starts realizing that you weren't just special, you were rare. And the pain doesn't come from wanting you back, it comes from knowing she may never encounter someone who loved with the same sincerity you did. The regret grows even heavier when she finally accepts that you're no longer emotionally available to her. Maybe she wants to reach out but stops herself. Maybe she thinks about messaging you but fears your silence. Maybe she reopens your chat and closes it again. Women don't always want to rekindle the relationship. They often just want emotional reassurance that they could if they needed it. But when she realizes she no longer has that reassurance, it hits her harder than the breakup itself. The emotional safety net she once took for granted is gone, and for the first time she feels the full weight of the disconnect. Another reason she never fully heals is because she loses the emotional influence she once held over you. A woman can sense when a man no longer sees her through the same lens, when he no longer reacts to her charm, no longer falls for her patterns, no longer responds to her emotional shifts, no longer prioritizes her presence. She feels it intuitively, And nothing affects a woman more deeply than realizing she lost emotional influence over a man who once loved her intensely. It forces her to confront the truth that she didn't just lose you, she lost a version of herself that had significance in your world. Your growth becomes another emotional wound for her, not because she hates seeing you succeed, but because she realizes your evolution could have happened with her by your side. She sees how disciplined you've become, how much calmer you are, how purposeful your life feels now. She sees the changes you made, mentally, emotionally, physically. She knows you became a better man after she left, and women feel that as a personal loss. They start wondering if leaving was the catalyst for your transformation, and whether staying would have given them access to the stronger, wiser version of you they now admire from a distance. She begins noticing how your silence changed her. Not the loud arguments, not the emotional conversations, not the dramatic moments, the silence. Silence is where she feels the consequences of her choices the most. Silence forces her to imagine what you're thinking. Silence forces her to confront the emptiness her decisions created. Silence forces her to acknowledge that you owe her nothing, now. Not closure, not explanations, not emotional comfort. And when she realizes she no longer has access to your heart, your mind, or your emotional presence, that's when the final layer of regret starts forming. There are quiet nights when she lies awake and wonders whether she'll ever meet a man who makes her feel the way you once did. Not in the beginning, not during the honeymoon phase, but throughout the connection. She remembers the steady way you loved, the calm way you communicated, the level of trust she felt around you, the emotional patience you had when she fell apart. That kind of presence doesn't leave a woman's mind. It becomes a memory she carries into every future relationship, influencing her expectations and her fears. Healing may soften the wound, but it never erases the emotional imprint. Her regret becomes long-term because she begins to see that losing you didn't just change her relationships, it changed her relationship with herself. She becomes more cautious, more guarded, more analytical, more hesitant to open her heart. She may blame the world, blame the men she meets, blame the circumstances, but deep down she knows this shift began the day she lost you. You were the last man she allowed to see her completely. And now, she struggles to offer that vulnerability to anyone else. Healing can mend insecurities, but it can't restore the innocence she once had before losing a man who truly loved her. Years later, she may look back and realize that you were the man who entered her life at a time when she wasn't emotionally mature enough to receive the kind of love you offered. She wasn't ready to be consistent. She wasn't ready for stability. She wasn't ready for accountability. She wasn't ready for the emotional depth you were capable of. And that realization becomes one of the heaviest truths a woman carries, knowing she lost something valuable before she understood its worth. That's why she never fully heals, because part of her healing requires admitting she wasn't ready for what she asked for. And in the end, the reason she'll never fully heal from losing you is simple. You were not a placeholder, you were not temporary, and you were not forgettable. You were a milestone in her emotional evolution, a turning point, a reference point, a reminder of the kind of love she didn't know how to keep. She may move forward, she may love again, she may build a new life, but the emotional chapter she shared with you becomes part of her forever, not because she wants to return, but because she knows a part of her grew too late. You outgrew the pain she caused, but she never outgrew the memory of the man who would have stood by her through anything if she had been wise enough to stay.